Here's a spoiler warning before I start. This is going to be a load of big spoilers for the full Shadowbringers story, so tread carefully. Now that's out of the way, holy shit! Final Fantasy XIV has been incredible and I've finally experienced the conclusion to our adventures in the other world. Enstenien Gaius and the story around them was awesome. The Eden raids were consistently great, probably the best set of 12 raid bosses the game has. Bahamut is back, and I don't entirely understand how. There's loads of references and themes from Final Fantasy 7 and 8. There's even a surprise guest that makes a return from my nightmares. This has been an awesome experience and I live to feed off these feelings from games, but they're few and far between. You know those amazing feelings you get experiencing an awesome game for the first time? Like Final Fantasy VI to Final Fantasy X, Persona 4, Dark Souls. I got this feeling in A Realm Reborn, but it died off over time into Stormblood where I quit. I really like the direction the story is going. I liked it so much when I was playing I was tempted to paste this like a fine wine, but I've gobbled it all up. Now, where to start? While I don't really sleep in a normal bed, as a black mage and master of destruction, I prefer the comfort of my coffin. I've got my own apartment and room in our free company. I lost my house when I was unsubscribed for the game for too long. Welcome to my room. Here I house some of my trophies from past victories, and over here I have my original Final Fantasy XI character, with his terrible name. Don't ask why he's dressed like a pig. So I unlocked the 2 base level 80 dungeons, Academia and which awesomely had the Guardian Force Quetzalcoatl from Final Fantasy VIII, but I want to focus in on the Twinning Dungeon. No dungeon deserves a music track as good as this. It takes place inside the alternative side of the Crystal Tower, and we come across this pretty awesome boss, Tycoon, which has a very similar design to Alexander. Quick thoughts on this, it has Cid's colour scheme and even their team logo on the back of the boss. The original Alexander could manipulate time. So does this mean that Cid builds this machine based on Alexander in the future, and this Tycoon has time travelled back to the past? I'm sure someone's already worked it all out in a Reddit somewhere. The next step in my adventures really began with the patch 5.1 story content. It starts off quite slow paced, we're helping the recently reformed city of Ulmo, nothing too exciting. But towards the end of the chapter we cross paths with the badass dragoon Enstenien, and we get to relive his recent adventures. So while we've been adventuring in another world, in our absence Enstenien and Gaius have been saving this world and battling the corrupt Garlemald. Shit hits the fan in the capital city of Garlemald. They come across its leader, Varus, murdered by his son Xenos, and the brawl commences. Here in Shadowbringers I see each of our 3 fighters here represents an arc of Final Fantasy XIV. Gaius, the manipulated villain of A Realm Reborn, Enstenien, the villain of Heavensward, while under the corruption of the dragon Nidhogg, and Xenos, the major villain of Stormblood, and just general monster. This has got to be the greatest in-game cinematic battle of Final Fantasy XIV, so far. The entire Garlean army comes down on our heroes. We then get to play Enstenien as the 2 try to make their escape. This part is very reminiscent of the Praetorium dungeon, it even reuses the same music. After splitting up, our boy Enstenien takes on a new type of Ultima weapon, which also just happens to be the final boss of the original Praetorium, so there's a layer of nostalgia baked in this for me. I've got to say this left me with overwhelming feelings of awesomeness, and it's laying the path to the final expansion, Endwalker, which is starting to look very promising. Come the next chapter of the story, we see Ardbert's corpse possessed by the Ascian Elidibus. He's the last of the big 3 Ascians. Ardbert was the original warrior of darkness whose spirit helped us through Shadowbringers, so it kinda sucks to see his corpse being used this way. We also see my most hated Final Fantasy XIV character return, Ashai. He's such a weasel. I thought we finished him off in Stormblood. But the real meat of this patch is when we return to Alamigo. Here we're reluctantly reunited with Gaius. He survived the escape after splitting from Enstenien. Thank God, because I actually want to see this underdog make it to the next expansion, Endwalker, and get some vengeance on the corrupt Garlemald. Gaius brings word of Garlean weapon monstrosities. We already defeated the Ultima weapon, but now 4 more weapons are on their way. All 5 of these weapons are based on the original 5 weapons awoken by the planet in Final Fantasy VII. Sapphire, Diamond, Ultima, Emerald, and Ruby weapon. Very exciting for me with Final Fantasy VII being my all-time favourite game. The first of the weapons to attack is the Ruby weapon. This guy was my Final Fantasy bane for a long time, but I finally defeated him and here he is back for revenge. Just like in FF7, the ruby weapon will dig its claws in underground and perform massive quicksand whirlpools, but this time you'll actually need to climb on top of its claws to avoid its quicksand. Emerald weapon was a challenge in FF7, but not quite as difficult as the ruby weapon. Emerald splits its upper part off for special attacks, just like in the original, and Diamond weapon has energy blast bombardments that it uses to return fire, just like in the original. Now, Sapphire Weapon was a big underwater weapon that we didn't actually get to fight in Final Fantasy VII, so what do they do here? Well, we build our own weapon with Cid. It's called the G-Warrior. We pilot it like something out Gundam Wing or Pacific Rim, and we can perform Dragon Ball attacks like the Kamehameha and Spirit Bomb, and hell, let's just throw in some kind of energy lightsaber in for the hell of it too. This is awesome. Across the board, the raid designers deserve a lot of praise, especially for their continued creativity in coming up with new mechanics. One of my favourite new mechanics involves following arrows marked on the floor to position yourself to shield the group from a meteor attack. The rest of the group then clear the meteor. You just look like a badass trying to hold off meteors. All of the weapon fights get a bit weird though, as they break their limits and use too much power. Previous major Guardian characters take form and twist the fight with new mechanics and phases. It was a bit weird, part of me just wished they stuck to the pure original weapon fights, but overall I'm very happy. Back to the story, patch 5.3 reveals that time is running out for the Scions that joined us in the other world. We need to return them to our homeworld or they'll die. The Crystal Exarch Grahatia is working on a solution to fix this, but that's taking a toll on him, and he himself is in danger of turning to Crystal from using the Crystal Tower's power. Over the course of Shadowbringers, I've developed a gradually increasing empathy towards Grahatia. Back in A Realm Reborn, he was someone I didn't particularly care for. Moving on, the final Ascian, Elidibus, takes the time to measure our strength and learns of our past achievements. It was nice getting a nostalgic trip through our key moments in Final Fantasy XIV. Back at Ulmor, the sky is raining comets. Elidibus summons warriors of light from all worlds to defeat us. We rush across the world of Novaront to defend the Crystallarium. This takes the form of the dungeon, the Hero's Gauntlet. There's a few bosses here which open speculations to new classes for Endwalker. We fight a Necromancer and a Berserker, both jobs in previous Final Fantasy games, but the new jobs in Endwalker ended up being neither of these. I would have liked Necromancer, but they're very rarely seen as a playable class throughout the series. We arrive at the Crystal Tower and battle Elidibus. He's able to merge with the Warriors of Light to become an avatar of the original Warrior of Light from Final Fantasy I. Another cool fight. When he'd use fire magic would need to stand perfectly still, and when he'd use ice magic would need to move about, otherwise he'd murder us. With a little help from Grahatia siphoning the power of the Crystal Tower, we're able to finish the fight, but sadly at the cost of him turning to Crystal. We then get the true ending to our Shadowbringers adventures in the world of Novaront. We're now able to return to our homeworld fully, and from here, we're able to restore Grahatia with his crystallized blood and memories he left for us, which felt pretty good. I thought I'd mix it up a bit and ran the Eden raids. Even before entering the raid, I'm hit with nostalgia from Final Fantasy VIII music playing in the area surrounding the raid. Eden itself was a guardian force in Final Fantasy VIII. So the Eden raid is split into 12 different encounters, and the devs have just completely done away with trash monsters, so in every section of Eden, you're exclusively dealing with just a boss. This isn't the kind of raid you explore and get lost in, it's just 12 quality bosses. So, loading up the first encounter, we're hit hard with Eden Prime itself. I wasn't expecting to fight Eden itself straight away. Its design is very faithful to Final Fantasy VIII, and extra points for the devs recreating its ultimate attack in the over-the-top PlayStation 1 style. We then had the Voidwalker boss, who confused the hell out of me by casting delayed abilities that wouldn't take effect until later in time. I'm wondering if this was intentionally designed around Final Fantasy VIII, where time itself is a core theme. The next 4 bosses were Eden's reimagined versions of our primal encounters in A Realm Reborn. There's Leviathan, Titan, Ramu, Ixion, Garuda, and Ifrit, and these are definitely not lazy reuses of old bosses. The fights are completely different, with different mechanics, arenas, music, and the bosses looked completely different too. Ramu was merged with Ixion, Leviathan had 2 heads, Ifrit had a more humanoid form, and I really enjoyed all of these primal fights. Titan wasn't quite as brutal as the original, but he did have some nice remixed music. Garuda and Ifrit you fight at the same time, and I had the lowest expectations for this fight, but it was actually pretty fun with the two merging together. The Idol of Darkness was a very unusual boss, which had me thinking with portals. Again, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but all the white birds had me thinking of Final Fantasy VIII's Renoa and her white feathers. The final primal reimagining was Shiva, a pretty chillaxing fight with some cool story tied to it, with our hero Ryan trying to use the power of Shiva and instantly becoming corrupted. Next up, the Cloud of Darkness in her human form. This fight was a nightmare as a black mage and being unable to stand still on the same platform for too long. The Shadow Keeper was a giant dog that telegraphed his attacks from his shadows, while the Fatebreaker was Ryan's memories of Thancred and Ranjit merged together to make a nightmare. This was another really enjoyable fight where you'd have to pay attention to the aura of dragons. If the aura was blue, the boss's next attack would be much larger than it was telegraphed. If it was red, there would be an added knockback that might knock you off the arena. If it was yellow, there would be more area of effect attacks. You very much have to pay attention to all the tells of the dragon. The final fight was with Eden's Promise. This boss takes multiple abilities from memories of previous bosses, and it was very difficult to keep up with so many different combinations of abilities at once, which is how it should be. The final boss should be hard. Overall, Eden was a great experience, even just on normal mode. There's some fantastic fights here, and I'd say the strength of the Eden raid would be its consistency. All the fights are consistently great, compared to the previous raids that have some filler encounters, or just raids filled with trash monsters. We don't get that with Eden, it's quality from start to finish. Speaking of fillers, to be honest, patch 5.4 felt a bit more like a filler patch, with us chasing after flying pigs and learning to use them to cleanse people who have been tempered. We also helped Mulb, the leader of Limbs Laminza, with quelling rioting pirates and befriending beastmen. The real treat in this chapter was at the very end with that weasel Ashai, revealing his new powerful pet, Luna Bahamut. Ashai's corpse has been possessed by yet another Ashian, Fandaniel, who's not one of the big three and chaotic in nature. We're kind of playing whack-a-mole with Ashians at this point. I thought it would be the end of them with the end of Elidibus. And more importantly, I don't really understand how Bahamut has been resummoned at all. I'm pretty sure I completely destroyed its crystal in the Bahamut's Coil raid. Now comes the final story patch of Shadowbringers. We get to revisit Aziz's Law, which is probably my most favourite zone in all of Final Fantasy XIV. Just look at it. With Enstenien, we finally revisit Tiamat, who's still been imprisoned since we left her in Heavensward. This is Bahamut's mate. We persuade her to help us put down the corrupt Bahamut and free her. I've always felt really bad about leaving Tiamat in prison, so really happy to finally revisit this plot point. Meanwhile, Garleans alongside Bahamut and his brood are attacking the Amal Jar. We rush to help, and this takes the form of a pretty awesome dungeon with a brilliant scorching sunset in the skybox. This is the Paclitham Dungeon, and it's currently the final dungeon of the game. It's a solid dungeon. I love how Tiamat and Enstenien keep crashing by, but the final battle with Bahamut is the cherry on top. Since we first defeated Bahamut in his raid, I've always dreaded his Akmon ability. It would destroy our tanks, and he'd use it exclusively on our tanks. But now in this dungeon, I'm having to take the Akmons to the face. Hell, I'm cool with Bahamut coming back just for this moment. Both Gratia and Enstenien join the Scions. It's well earned for the both of them, and it's nice to see some new members in our ranks after we've lost quite a few Scions now. And we see most of the world united, that's including Beastmen, as everyone is preparing for war with Garlemald. The last nation we need to join us are the Sharlians, and they've sent an emissary to discuss terms. And it turns out it's the son of the legendary Louis Soir, who's also the father of Alphinaud and Alice. He's a massive dick who rejects the offering, and within a few minutes of being reunited with his children, he orphans them and takes away their family name. Holy shit, Dad of the Year right here, but pretty funny. This leaves us with a skirmish battle with the Garleans. They've corrupted primals and are on the offensive. It's a pretty good little scenario. We get to fight lunar primals, but it feels like it could have been a bit more epic. Maybe it was scaled down a bit with all the bad stuff going on in the world at the moment. But that's me finally all caught up and ready for Endwalker. I've been properly hyped for it, especially since watching the benchmark trailer. Overall, Shadowbringers has been a pretty epic journey. I've loved all the themes and references from Final Fantasy VII and VIII, and it's been extra special having the base Shadowbringers story and then 5 content patches to work through all at once. I've been completely addicted to the story of this game. I keep saying it, the storytelling here is better than the past few single-player Final Fantasy games. There's a few bits and pieces for me still to do. I'm probably going to delve into the Bojan Southern Front soon, and there's a few pieces of Stormblood optional content I missed, but I'm kind of sad I've not actually got any more story to do. But for now, peace.